What's good, everybody? Hope you are having a wonderful week so far. Podcast time. Kevin Knapp. Kevin has been in this industry for a while and has achieved some amazing things. His music has just like resonated over like years and years. His voice has been heard in clubs for years. People have raved to his lyrics. People have raved to his beats, and he's also such a nice dude. So I wanted to get him on. I've been lucky and fortunate enough to bump into Kev over the years and have conversations with him. But I've never really had the chance to like sit down for long periods of time and have a good conversation. Every time we catch up, it's like 10, 15, 30 minutes here, and they're always like pretty deep, and I always get something from them. So I wanted to get him on and selfishly get more from it for myself, and hopefully you guys can take something from it. So without further ado, Kevin Knapp. Mr. Kevin Knapp, so good to see you, man.
What's going on?
Good, man. I'm sorry about all the confusion about all this podcast stuff. That was completely on me for not reading DMs.
Yeah, no, well, I was, I don't know if I already had your number or not, but I was coming at you through Insta chat or whatever it's called, which is I forget everything that happens there all the time.
No,
So
it's all good, man. Last time I saw you in person, we were doing sessions in San Francisco for Walker and Royce,
yeah.
and we had a brief catch up then. But how's things? How's life?
Yeah, good. I was actually just at Empire with Luke Andy. I've noticed that I was doing my homework on your podcast earlier today, and each time you get up and like toggle something over there when you start. I don't know if that's what that is, but anyway,
it's I tell you what it is. It's so for a period of time, a bunch of people were like, "Will, we can't hear the guest," and it's weird because I can hear you really loud and clear, but then I look at the recording level and the guest is, because it's going through internet and everything like that, the guest comes in lower.
Yeah.
So I'm like boosting you up to like, so it kind of almost sounds too loud for me, but yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, cool. Well, I feel properly oriented because I was like, ooh, this is something. So yeah, I'm good. I was at Empire actually, ironically again, in a better studio than the last time. Last time I was there, you had the gangster flagship studio, and I was like in some bizarre side room with Minx. So I got the second biggest one on a Monday afternoon. I was with Luke Andy working on a project. So that was fun to kind of go back. I'm starting to learn that I have that resource here in the city. And yeah, we're taking care of chickens and a dog and making sure our pool doesn't turn green and doing all the sort of thing one does when you have a house in the Bay Area or maybe any area. And yeah, we had a fire in the Oakland Hills, which is like a phrase that strikes fear in the hearts of some people. On Friday, there was a fire in 1991, which unfortunately a lot of people lost their lives and stuff. But so the conditions were such that what they call a red flag warning. So humidity low, winds high, and brush sparked up. And so we spent we had a little bit of a stressful weekend wondering if the house we put together was going to stick around. The evacuation zone was close to us, like just like an exit away on the freeway, but it's extinguished and life goes on.
That's scary shit, man. That's scary shit. Why the move back to America? You were living in, for anybody that doesn't know, you were living in Berlin for a very long time.
Yeah. So being an expat is sexy at the outset, and then after a window of time, it becomes, you begin the little things. It's kind of like a relationship, right? Like the little things that are small and that you can get through in the beginning become larger, sort of, and larger the more time you spend. So for me, like Berlin served a really great specific purpose, I think, of widening my musical reach. And so it was important. I think it was Robag years ago said you never get big at home. So I was a local DJ in San Francisco before I moved there, and it sort of changed everything. The Stay Glued, My Beat Will Control You record hit like right as I was landing in Berlin, and so the international community sort of knew who I was at that point.
Yeah.
And so it was perfect timing, kismet in that way. And
Mm.
then, I spent basically 9 years, 8 years and 9 months there. And we started the record label, and enough hangovers and enough missing, the comfort food that would nurse me back to health, and I think that like I really sort of mentally started to turn the corner when I realized like starting Clump as an LLC. I went to law school here in the States, and so I'd
Mm.
taken corporate law and all this stuff. So I sort of had like an understanding of how to navigate the business environment in America. And even though it's still a Western country in Germany, it's not American law. And so the process of what they call a GmbH there, incorporating essentially, or providing yourself with whatever corporate liability protection
Yeah.
was not the same. And I started to realize that a lot of running a business in a foreign country, when I had been trained to learn how to run one here in the States, was not exactly what I wanted to do. And then the parents get older, and COVID hit, and that sort of pulled on the how far are you from your family heartstrings.
Mm.
And so that sort of confluence of events and timing, etc., led to me coming back in January of 22. So.
Mm. You happy?
Uh, yes, that's kind of like an existential question, but in this moment, I feel comfortable and good. Yeah, I mean, it's good to be back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I feel proud of my sort of tenacity, sense of adventure. Take what you can out of life, see what it has to give you, spirit that was associated in retrospect with moving to Berlin. And yeah, I've got through a bunch of sort of like home projects and making this place as lovely as it can be. I'm in my studio, which you can't see much of at the moment, but it's treated, and it's a
Mm.
dedicated room, sort of a dedicated building outside of our primary home. My partner has a studio next door, which is almost complete as well. Mine was complete first, and I am the one with AC, uh, but I'm the one who cares more about AC, so that's all right. And yeah, I think generally it's been good to be back. I guess the other thing I would say, and you have a good sense of this, playing at least at one time, I think more of a boom bap oriented sound, and having straddled living both in Europe or the UK and here in the States. I think I played well in Europe and with the Hot Creations releases, etc. In that
Yeah.
window of time in the 2010s. It made a lot of sense for me to be a plane ride away from Ibiza, a plane away from the UK at that period. And now I think the sounds have, the UK sound and the American sound have departed. I think a fair amount, and I was raised on hip hop, and I'm nothing if not a big gorilla fraught with boom bap. So like that's just kind of what I do and who I am. So I sometimes think that the kids that grew up with 12-inch woofers in their trunks are the people that identify with how I get down the most, and so I think it's the right market for me to be in at the moment,
Yeah.
and so that makes me happy.
It's strange how markets change, right?
Yeah, yeah, very
And
much.
you've been in this a long time. How do you feel the market is right now?
Well, it depends on which one, I guess. And I mean, there is a global market to consider. What I'm being told, which is not necessarily how I feel, but what I'm evaluating, is that it's somewhat in retreat post like post explosion, post COVID explosion. There's now a bit of a waning, right,
Mm.
of events, and the fervor of being pent up, the pent up energy to go out and see shows and stuff is not quite what it was. And so I'm seeing what I think is a tighter marketplace for artists to try to insert themselves into. I think that 2025 will be a bit more challenging market to keep the same pace of gigs and stuff. But I think that combined with the amount of people that are entering the industry kind of only makes sense. And I would like to believe that you get to see the creme of the creme that way anyways, so that like some of who you're actually seeing are when people do come are the best, the best of the best, and that's inspiring. Yeah, I think that, what I can gather from the market in the UK is that things have, or not, just in Europe in general, I think things are, musically speaking, a lot more tracky maybe and linear, and probably a lot less, I don't know, over the top and sensational, for lack of a better term, but that doesn't really square with
AKA shit.
Yeah.
It's fine. You can say it. Let's be real here.
yeah. AKA not great. So
yeah.
yeah.
What do you think? What do you think did that?
The music goes in cycles, right? And so I think that it's interesting because if you're in the game long enough, you see things sort of retreat, it's like a pendulum that swings. So it goes back and forth between, hey, we want things slow and big and boomy, or now we want things faster and more stripped. And then I think, at some point the BPMs actually will come back down. It's just like it's like physics.
Yeah.
It's like the laws of physics. And so depending on where you are in that spectrum, I think at any given time, that things will sort of pivot back to maybe what your natural inclinations are. I think that we're musically, in a moment that is still sort of a response to what the late aughts musically were. And so I think that people, like, what generates interest in a moment when things are like, large sounding, bigger room, more aggressive, is restraint. And I personally feel like there's a bit more restraint, at least in probably the tech house space, that I'm hearing and listening to, especially from the European side of things than there has been in years, and I think that that's natural.
Where do you sit when it comes to that, though, right? Because I think as artists, you've been around many cycles of sounds,
Yeah.
like in your time. What's your like? How do you adapt? How do you evolve?
Yeah, these are great questions. Nice work. Because they're the questions that I sit here and ask myself if I wasn't on the podcast. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I think you find your sort of place within the current landscape, and there's always some place to land. So for me, like, I am dramatic, right? Like on stage, and which is probably contrary to maybe how I'm presenting in this moment. But that's kind of where I go to let it all out. And I have this, like, for whatever reason, I'm anchored around this mental thought of, like, asses dropping on the dance floor in a club. You came to bounce. Fuck is up, like that's like that's my baseline, and I think it has to do with this, like, urban hip hop clubs, what dancing was, what my aunts and uncles did, like, like, the liquor's out, like, ooh, like, uncle's gonna, like, throw a hip to the right, and we're gonna we're gonna clap, and this is what it's gonna be, and so then you pair that against restraint, right? The question is, how do I find and adapt in this current landscape? And I think, I can focus and round out my ability to be dynamic, my tool belt, by learning from these different expressions of music, which is what I do with many genres, that even those that have nothing to do with dance music. I feel like if someone puts something on, generally, I can find something to take from it and incorporate. And even if it just becomes like an accent point for me in whatever I'm doing, it's still relevant and inspiring. And so I may tone down some of production Kev a little bit to fit the current wave of what's happening in order to be in conversation with it. But I never really lose sort of my sense of self. I also mentioned, I sent like an email off to your assistant or whatever. I've got a hip hop project, KJ Cuts, with Jamie Rael from Audio Jack, and that has also become sort of an outlet for me. Is just to sort of break from that which I've always done and still do an electronically oriented project that takes things in a completely different direction, where I think I get it a chance to even incorporate more of sort of the current landscape of where I feel music is, even if Kevin Knapp is over here, being rumble, rough and tumble, I've got other outlets that help me.
It's really interesting because when it comes to that, I was talking to one of my mates about this, and I have often conversations with him about this, and talking about myself. Like, I have the Will Clarke, it's me, right? Like, I release music as Will Clarke, it's my name, blah blah blah. And he's like, dude, you need to put all the other music that you make like out on a different name and just like completely forget about it, but just put it out. To like not have any commerce, just to put music out and allow like another way of just putting it out into the world, right? Do you think having your hip hop project allows the Kevin Knapp project to be more focused?
Yeah, I do. And I think it also influences the Kevin Knapp project, because some of what I do over there what I do with KJ Cuts, appears now in Kevin, in terms of like lyrical quantity, delivery, getting closer, I think, to moving from spoken word to actual sort of hip house or whatever lyricism. So I do think that that it enables Kevin Knapp to be what it wants to be, but it also is influenced by KJ Cuts.
Yeah. It's a really interesting time. Obviously, you come back to America, you talk about like the music that you're wanting to make and you're releasing. You were a big part of the Dirtybird family at the time. In your eyes, what happened there?
I'm loving this. Yeah, it's a I'm probably further away from the internal what actually happened. So I viewed myself. I had a long standing relationship with Barkley, like from 2005 or something, before all this stuff sort of took shape, and I put some music on television for them. I was doing like sync licensing at that point as an agent. He played for us for next to nothing. So I've been sort of on his radar for basically 2 decades, and there was a falling out, I know, at some point, and sort of a changing of the guard to like a new school and an old school sort of like core contingency. I think that I got my musical shot after having moved to Europe, just as Robag had predicted. Like when in sort of this, I was the beginning of the second wave in terms of my features at campouts and things of that nature. And I sort of feel like the headache of campouts, and like just from a liability perspective, so the lawyer in me, right, is always, when I think about us throwing our own events for Plump, the first thing that I'm just like, liability, like how are we gonna keep people safe? How do I even get the stomach?
It's such an American thing to think about.
yeah. I guess that's but because we're a litigious society, we sue the
Yeah.
fuck out of each other all the time.
Yeah. All
So
the time.
all the time, and then so you fill people, with a bunch of substances, and you throw them out, throw them out into community where they stay up all night, and then just hope that nobody comes for you. Like that's insanity to me. So,
Yeah. It's crazy.
so I think I heard a little undercurrent of that in some of Barclays writing, PR, whatever about it. That it was a lot to take on,
Yeah.
and it was not without him being concerned about every single camper.
Mm.
And then that to me is easy math, right? Like that's I understand, just from the business sense, I understand why that folded. Simultaneously, I'm affected by the absence of
Of
Camp Out
course.
because that was that generated a bunch of shows for me, on the backside of each year that I performed with it and did the ones in Florida and whatever. So, yeah, I understand it. I also can't speak to the market, like the record label purchasing market, but from what I read and understand and what he took to the bank when he sold Dirtybird, and he has a family and all these different things. I can understand, monetizing your life's work to make sure that your family is set up for,
Why not?
yeah,
Right?
why
Why?
would you
Why the
not?
fuck
Yeah.
not?
And especially, I think from like I probably sound super businessy now. So let me explain to people why I'm just still a passionate dance fairy. But I after you put so much you put so much in to this career, and it's so difficult sometimes to get on, or to be presented in the right way, or to command whatever fees, or good year, bad year, up and down, and all these different things, that I think a lot of us get concerned about just overall security and the value of the work that we do. It's really hard as an artist to value your work, and to sort of fight for it. And I have, having come from like a whatever legal background or whatever, where I had a 9 to 5. It was much more than that, but I know that understanding your own value, I know what I put into it, so I know that understanding your own
Mm.
value on this side is important, and I'm not ashamed to sort of speak on that. So in that vein, if you have the ability to sort of like set yourself up, and you've been an experience, like a platform for so many of us as Dirtybird had, I can kind of understand that decision. So without going into the particulars of who did who, how, what, or why,
Totally. Yeah. That's not our
yeah,
place to talk
yeah, I
about
don't know
that.
anything about all of that stuff. But what I, from a bigger perspective, that's what I think happened.
I guess when it comes to that, though, right, is like the struggles of being an artist and kind of knowing your worth in the industry and getting your worth in the industry. How do you kind of go through that as someone? Because it's something that I struggle with on a daily basis, and I think everyone does, right? It's like and I say it so many times, like we put so much into this for the gamble for it to do well. It's not like you're a lawyer, right? Yes, there's good lawyers and there's bad lawyers and there's okay lawyers, right? And the good lawyers earn a shit. Well, sometimes bad lawyers earn a shit ton of money. But like,
Right.
let's use your past life for example. Is like you get a set amount per hour, you get a set amount per case, whatever that is, right? And there is a ladder to climb that you then can that equates wealth and
Yeah.
security. And with wealth comes security.
Yeah.
You then step out of that world into a world where you don't know where that's going to come from
Yes.
and if it's ever going to come, right? Which goes to show like that we're truly doing it because we love it, because it's not about the money, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like as we get older, you get older, I get older, or as I can only speak for myself, but as I get to the point in my life where you've done it for so long, and not saying that I have any expectations and I deserve financial security, but there does come a point when it's like is this ever gonna happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you've been doing it longer than me, like full time. How do you kind of get through those moments of like, is this ever gonna happen?
Yeah, well, and they become more urgent. They also become like energy urgent, right? Like as I'm doing what I guess is a relaunch of sorts at the moment. I, sometimes you think about how many relaunches you have in you,
Mm,
which is just energetically speaking. Financially speaking, I'm fortunate to be in a position where I'm not living gig to gig, and I'm also fortunate to, for many years. I don't know that I've been doing it without a second job as many years as you have. We can go back and forth on that. I really kind of stopped having like a background. I was a staff lawyer for a nonprofit that I was working from Berlin for. I
mm,
think I put that down for the first time for a year in 2016, and then I finally like walked away from it in 2019 of all years.
okay.
But yeah, um, I think it's hard. I think that I have a sense of optimism currently. I got about like where I'm at in the studio, what's
Yeah.
happening, this reinvention of my creative process, and believe, and just being so sort of like consumed by that I can't see a way that it's not going to pay off in some sort of like, whatever security down
Yeah.
the road, at least as much as things have thus far, because I feel like it's so much better. This is,
Yeah.
of course, me romanticizing my own, like squarely up my own ass, right? Like, but, but it's okay, and we kind of have to be because you can't be like everybody else, and you got to have a USP and your own perspective. So, like, I'm supposed to be, I guess, as an artist, right
Well, and
there.
also, no one else is going to do it for you,
Yeah, no one else is going to do it for you.
right?
Um, yeah, no, they're not. Yeah, no, we have to champion our own stuff. But I
And
am like super excited, not to cut you off, but about this phase creatively. And I have personal. So like when we're talking about looking forward and how do you make it through lean moments, and right now I'm probably in a little leaner moment due to this relaunch, and having moved back to the U.S. and split my attention between making sure that the house and everything is set up and all the rest of it, and writing an album, which we now are going to pivot, I think, and release the singles. But so that's led to this like dearth of releases, which has put me sort of where I'm at the moment. But it's fine because I have a bunch of fire stacked, and I'm excited about the process that we're about to engage in. So all of that, there's always the tomorrow's going to be sick
yeah.
because I saw what just happened at Empire or in this room, and motherfuckers just don't know. Like like, but you
Yeah.
have to, like it sounds silly and like I'm being silly about it, but it really is that sort of belief in that what you're creating, your peers will respect and the world will be turned on by. And I don't know where that road leads, but I feel like every other road is not as sexy.
I totally agree. And I think there is a level of reinventing yourself throughout your career multiple times does give us as artists a new lease of life, right?
Yeah.
For me, I had it with I had my Dirtybird era, I then had my techno era, and now I'm doing my album and live shows and all of that era, and it's definitely helps. When at what point do you get to in your career where you're like, okay, we need to switch it up? What's that feeling?
Yeah. I think I'm kind of entering that now. I think boredom,
Yeah,
right? Or fears of being a one trick pony. Right? Like, is that all you got? Like,
yeah,
like when you get to the point where you're like, boring yourself in the studio or whatever, then I think that it's kind of time to pivot. That's the best way that I can articulate how it's felt. I would say like my current reinvention has to do with sobriety. So
interesting.
like because I used to always say, from the lyrical side, which I guess is probably still what a lot of the world associates with me, even though I do a bunch of other things. Like, I would always say that I would find my best lyrics somewhere down towards the bottom of a bottom of a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc, and really I could just feel it, and the mic becomes like a challenger. I'm like, what? Like, who wants some of Debo? Like, and then it just kind of comes out of you. But like these days, which was a track I did with Ida Jack as well. That's not on the table, and so being in therapy and all these different things and take you all the way in, one of the things that my therapist was saying is that, like, you're going to get to find out that all of that was what you were attributing to, getting on it and being dope because you are imbibed or whatever is actually you. And so I've, mentally been able to shift into gangster mode. And then not only that, but I feel like my writing has gotten stronger. Like, as a result, more considered, less sort of just whatever non-directional blasting, and more focused and more succinct and more punchy, and so my current reinvention comes from like change of state, from nutritionists and gym. Like, I was on the bike this morning before I'm in here, like, this is a far cry from rolling out of bed and just like, eating the microphone, which is what it would usually be. This time it's like, hey, had the berries and eggs and the coffee and the bike and what's up, so it's like a whole different approach. And so
what was that shift? What was that shift in your life though that made you look at yourself in the mirror and go, I need to do something different to get a different result?
Probably age. My refusal to let the career
pure stubbornness.
my refusal to let the career go because I was starting to get sore climbing these stairs to the stage. So I was like, well, guess it's time to hit the gym because I'm not through, like that's literally. And also, if the hangovers are messing with everything else, or it's taking me a week to come back from it, and I don't have that time, to give because of all the other external life forces, then we should probably see what happens if we cut those out too. So that was really it.
How long you been doing therapy for?
I did it a bunch as a kid and had some major turning points. A bunch is like maybe 3-4 years. And I started after George Floyd, actually, in Europe. And so it's, I guess, like literally probably a month later. I think that means like whatever, July of 22, 3 years, something like that. Yeah. 21.
That's a good shift.
Yeah, 20. That was 20, I think.
Yeah, 2020.
20. Yeah, so it would be I guess it was
4 years
this year. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Long time.
How does therapy look for you in a like, sorry to dig in, I'm really interested in it. My parents are therapists. So it's like, I grew up around therapy.
Okay.
But like, what really gets to you in your, like, when you needed to start therapy again, when you felt like you need to start, like, why? What's that process?
Yeah, so it's funny. I have some, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to accurately characterize a certain segment of society. So like, which is always tricky. So, there are sort of never therapy people, right? Like, you stand on your own. And I think even my parents are, this way, unlike your parents, obviously. So, I can pick myself up by my bootstraps. I don't need anyone else messing with my head. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself, that whole line of thought. I was going to be a therapist when I was, aspiring to go to college, until I realized that you were going to need a master's degree or a doctorate to practice it. And then, of course, I got my degree and then ended up going to law school for 3 years, which means I could have just been a therapist in the beginning, but I digress. Like, it's a total pain. But when you're a therapist, you have a therapist because you need a place to sort of like park all of the emotional energy exchange that you take on from all of these clients, because people are bearing all sorts of traumatic situations. This is stuff that but maybe
Yeah.
everyone else doesn't. All these traumatic situations, etc. And you can't just sort of hold that, like you've got to be able to diffuse it to sort of like be an objective sounding board for other people when they come to you, etc. You've got to that stuff takes processing, even if you're just sort of hearing it and you're like empathetic to other people. So therapists have therapists. So therapy was never a dirty word for me. And I saw what it did when you asked like what made me go. When I was younger, I was having trouble scholastically and stuff, and I was getting tested for various things to see if there's something was wrong there. And then academically, I like flipped on a dime because I got scared that it was just like, no, you're just lazy as shit. you're lazy and you don't apply yourself. So actually, before I got the results of all the like learning testing, I turned around my GPA on a dime and sort of went off and passed things with flying colors or what have you. That was therapy one. This is like the mid 90s, I guess, late 90s. And then post George Floyd, therapy two was just sort of about processing my place in the world and how I'm perceived. I think running around communities that I'm not ethnically represented in. Not everyone looks like me. A lot of people look like each other, but not like me, etc. I was just sort of processing that in the wake of what had happened, and I needed a place to do it because I didn't feel like everyone that was in my immediate circle could necessarily understand that juxtaposition of myself versus my homies, my brothers, and my group at large. And so I went to park sort of some of that. The reason I'm still in it, and I'm in it in various capacities, and I feel like my nutritionist is part of that as well, and in some ways my trainer even, is because I'm probably because I have an addictive personality, and now I'm addictive to self-growth. And so, that's probably one thing that that is the real driver of all of this. But I want to be like, this sounds silly, but like the best human that I can possibly be. Like I'm interested in being.
Why does that sound silly? I challenge you on that. Why does that sound silly?
Because it's a really like idealistic pie on the sky to come on Will Clark's podcast and say, "I want to be the best human I can be." But it's true.
But I think the thing is accepting. I think there's the difference of saying that that's what you want and then not putting the work in to try and get there, and then there's saying it and then actually doing the work to try and get there. And like it is like, even from seeing like we've hung out over the years, like briefly, right? And we've had conversations briefly over the years, but I see a change, right? I've seen a change from when I first met you to now. And like, even just texting you like, oh, let me see if I can change my training. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and see it on social media. And I think that's the thing, is like the proof's in the pudding. You're actually doing it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to. I don't know what the word is. Like a cliche, I guess. I'm trying, just like I do with the music, right? I try to avoid being a cliche in any capacity. But yeah, So, but that's it. I mean, what's the downside, right? I will say that like in the last month or two or whatever, it's gotten tougher. Just like the slog of like, trying to meet some standard that doesn't exist. And so you go into the actual work and figure out. Because I thought one of your questions earlier was going to go to how do you make yourself happy with where you're at, or what's the acknowledgement, vis-a-vis this sort of adaptive and stay in it and be successful thing. There's also the perspective of taking stock of what you've accomplished. And
that's really hard.
It's really hard, but you've got, and I think we've talked about this. We might have talked a little bit about it at Empire.
Yeah.
But the prospect of it never being enough, while using that as an engine driver to distill this fight that makes you push on. It all, your greatest strength can be your greatest weakness too. The work that I'm doing now is like, Kev, like, you can't see here, but I've got every record I ever wrote, which is a lyric that I used, but in chronological order on my wall here in the studio, and those are, and they're tactile. And there's not a lot of people that have had the opportunity to do that. And I think that like building the muscle of being able to appreciate that is very important because with all the blessings that I've had in my life, you can just chase the next thing, and it doesn't matter how many things you acquire, it's still always going to be next. And so really focusing in on how to appreciate now is the key to appreciating next and then, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense, but please tell me how.
Well, therapy's always an option. Mom and dad. Mom, maybe hit up
hopefully,
mom and dad. Have some
hopefully they're not
coffee.
listening.
Take a walk.
No, I guess for me is like that question. Tell me how is like, how's that process been for you? Like, what have you had to go through to kind of get to that point? Are you even at that point where you
I
can do
don't.
that?
I don't know that you ever are, right? Like, I think the key is. My therapist just said this yesterday: progress, not perfection. So, taking stock of sort of where you're at. I don't. I don't know. I don't know how you get comfortable with it. I know that I'm more comfortable with it now, and I've seen, from yeah, just from my own personal journey, and being in a place where I feel secure now, and we have the house and all these different things. I've been telling myself, if you can't appreciate this, then how are you going to, what is it that's gonna come into your life that you're going to appreciate? And I've been fortunate enough to have the perspective, in a short amount of time, of what was a scarcity mentality to what doesn't need to be. And so then I have the privilege of being able to then now go back and unpack that stuff that is just pursuing that which you don't have. You have to learn how to, to be happy with what you got. And you say that to people, that are fighting for everything, and you say it from a place of, uh, you know, perhaps being slightly in a different space than them comfort wise, and they can be written off,
Yeah.
and or seem like a very privileged thing to be saying. But I've definitely lived both existences,
Mm.
and I can say that it's important to the extent that you can do it in both contexts. I really believe that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think talking for myself, it's a hard process to get to, and I'm definitely not there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think
it,
I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to, because I think it's cool, because we kind of did. I'm reminded of where we were in our discussion at Empire quickly before you had to
mm,
catch your flight, and you you, to me, I want to give you some flowers. You've been just like, killing it, reinventing yourself. I've always loved our interactions and how personal you've been, which I think was like a natural um, chain of events for us to come here and have a discussion together here, because of how much I've valued our discussions over the years everywhere else. But in that moment, you also, you did kind of mention, I said something to you about staying comfortable, and you were like, no, forward. And so in this moment, like, I was like, okay, that's what it takes to pull this type of stuff off. And then also everything else that I just spent the last 10 minutes saying. So I've been trying to square those two things. So I get that, not that fight makes right, but you're seeing results from your
yeah,
insatiability. So how do you quit it?
yeah, and I think I appreciate that first of all.
Yeah.
I I think for me, there's always been a goal at the top of my goal list, and I write goals every year, but like there's always an overarching goal, and it's very like blasé, and it's very like throwaway in a sense of like I think everyone wants it, and the goal is to be the biggest in the world,
Yeah.
right? Like, and what I'm trying to work out is is it the destination or is it the journey to the destination? And do I really want to be the biggest in the world? Because I don't know what that means when you're the biggest in the world.
Yeah, what it takes. Yeah.
But it's not what it takes, but for me, it's the process of I'm happy to put the work in to potentially try and get there. And I think once it's there, you're still then going to want more, right? And I think that's what we were kind of talking about, is that it's really interesting because we live in a world where people talk badly on billionaires and say there shouldn't be billionaires, right? I think differently to that personally. And in my views, somebody that's achieved great success financially, but also culturally and in their art, there's just a true grit and determination of just not giving up. Let's just use fish, for example, right? Like, we knew fish before fish was fish, right?
Mm-hmm.
As an artist,
Mm-hmm.
like 8 years of Cut Snake.
Mm-hmm.
Look where he's at now. He probably won't even talk to us. like like
Yeah.
and I don't mean that in a horrible way, but like
No, yeah.
that wasn't given to him on a plate. Like,
No.
look at all these massive artists. Even look at Barkley, like what he achieved. Like, are they the biggest in the world? No, because I don't know what is the biggest in the world. Like, there's nothing saying that you are the biggest in the world. There's nothing that can kind of do that. But I think for me, but I think for me, it's that, okay, what can I do in this world, in what I want to do, and how far can it go? And I really struggle, and I think this is probably what I need to work on in myself. I really struggle to like sit in the now.
Mm-hmm.
I can appreciate what I've done. Like, I can sit down and say, yeah, I've achieved some things that my 15-year-old teenager would never have even imagined, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, does that make me happy? It doesn't, if that makes sense. And I think that's the thing I struggle with the most.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, taking stock is difficult. And I'm increasingly, like, my road is to a bigger reach and to turn more people on in whatever way that means. Like, I personally, creatively, I always call myself a conduit, not to get like too NorCal spiritual on you, but it's like I am just channeling things that exist in the world, whatever, metaphysically or otherwise, and because of probably my particular sensibilities and sensitivities, I'm able to sort of open myself to those things, and they come through me when I play, when I create, and they touch something in other people that exists already, but it's not me. I don't have this sense of ego that like I did this. I just think that I'm listening, whatever, to the universe, for lack of better terms, or to environment in a way that, so I want to turn as many people on as I can. But I don't need to be the biggest in the world to do it, nor do I necessarily think that I would enjoy it, right? This is the other part that I've seen a couple of times, because I've, doing in law school, you take these informational interviews and you look at people, or you sit across from lawyers, and I did 3 of them, and every single one of them told me, don't go be a lawyer. And I was like, well, you've got some fucking nerve sitting across the table, like leather shoes kicked up, like Beamer out front telling me, don't do what you do. I'm not listening. And then I got into it, and I was like, oh, this is what they meant.
Should have listened.
Like they were trying to do me a favor, right?
Yeah.
And so, heavy lies the crown. And I think, I've been really trying to strike and take home this like perspective on balance. And I'll be honest, like for me personally, being the biggest in the world, while all the accolades and, the ego gets laid as a result, also, and I'm not putting anyone in that position currently, as we discussed, also probably would be a very tough thing to balance.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Like, so something's out of balance, and I'm actually personally right now more interested and keeping shit balanced than I am whatever if it's just an ego lay. There's also a financial success that comes with it as well. So of course I would like all my needs taken care of, and I would like to do that through music. That's kind of like humbly what I ask of it is to let me live my life, turning people on and have food on the table and maybe a car I would like. That's where I'm at.
What's the car? What's the car? Tell me. I'm into cars.
The current one, which I think we're about to get potentially, is the Rivian, and I want the sport package. There's a dual motor Rivian with a package that goes like 0 to 60 in miles an hour. In like 3 seconds. 2.9 or something.
Is it the pickup or is it the?
No, it's the SUV. We've got a Q5 right now, which was my previous favorite car. This is what I'm talking about. When you gotta be tried. And I know. So now we got it, and then now it's really easy to want.
Always the way.
Happy. It's always. I'm telling you.
Always the way.
The lessons are coming at me. It's up to me to pick them up and work the shit out.
I guess that's the bigger thing, right? It's like, what do we do it all for?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a question that is never going to be answered.
Oh, I'm taking it as rhetorical. There's no way I was not going to jump into a response.
No, there's no answer to that. And I love the question because it's like you always ask somebody and you always get a wanky response.
Yeah.
But it's like, fucking A.
But it makes you. But hold on, we can bring it out of the clouds a bit. It does make you fucking happy, right? Like. Is there a feeling like having a dance floor in the palm of your hand? I'll do you one better. Like I on some of these bike rides, like just like the athletes, I've started to visualize, right? Because I believe that's part of getting to where you like are doing all the things that you're supposed to do, all the great ones in their various disciplines. They've done these things, and this is how they've got to where they are. So I'm like, okay, I've got some time here, 5 minutes of my stationary bike. I'm gonna breathe, sort of meditate, and just see myself on these stages I want to be. And I watched your Coachella stream. And I think I mentioned that to you. I'm not sure. I think I did.
I didn't.
No, before or after. But that feels good, right? Like it feels, and it doesn't feel good because you're like, I'm at Coachella. It actually feels probably good to be at Coachella, to have probably some percentage of those people, because it's such a big mainstream crowd, not know who you are, and to be turning those motherfuckers on. Right, like knowing you're doing the right thing, and it's just like it's like it's flow state.
Yeah, you're right, and I think it's not even the ego side of it.
No,
in a sense of like, yes, you're playing Coachella, like that side of it realistically doesn't matter, because the minute you go on, in my opinion, it's just another stage.
Yeah,
right, and it's. I'm not being arrogant in that way. It's just another stage, but it's go and do your fucking job. Yeah. And if you do your job really well, the people in front of you are going to have fun. And at the end of the day, that is what we do it for.
Yeah. So that's, that's a partial answer, I think, to your why do we do it question, right? Like, because I used to say, this is probably not the best thing. I don't exist in this space now, but I consider us the caretakers of people's high. I know you haven't been doing that, but I'm like, you came out this weekend, you worked hard, whatever, you're wanting to let loose, and I'll be, goddamn if I'm the one that fucks that up. We're about to get on it. So.
Well, I know you say that it's not probably the best way to look at it, but it's pretty fucking true. Yeah. Like, what is a nightclub? What is going to a show? What is that? Why do we do that? Why do people drink? Why do people take drugs? Why do people be sober and go and listen to music? Why? It's escapism.
Yeah.
And it's having the ability to escape whatever you want to escape, whether it's negative or positive, like, and just truly lose yourself in that moment. There's not many, like, there's not really another form of art that allows you to do that. And there is arguments there. I'm sure there is, but like, in my opinion, I love going to an art gallery
Yeah.
but do I get the same feeling of what I get when I'm going to see a live band?
Yeah.
No.
No.
And I challenge that with anyone that tries to say differently, that music is not the easiest form of art to escape life and kind of put you in a moment and bring you to the here and now of like, I'm here and I'm just enjoying it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with that. I think for me, film does that as well, right? And then for me,
Yeah.
there's some part of cooking, which I know we also share. That it's not, it's, it's not in the same way, and it's maybe not as much. I try not to also all be hierarchical. Like, I don't know what drives all of those things, but all of those things are sort of about shutting the brain off and shutting touch, feel, intuitiveness, and emotional EQ on. I think.
I would challenge that though with film, because I fucking love film,
Yeah.
but go to the cinema and take the sound out.
Yeah.
Does it
Yeah.
give you the same
Yeah.
feeling?
No. No. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah.
Food, yeah, food, 100%. Like I'm there. I think we're on the same wavelength with food.
Yeah.
Um,
No, you're right, and I yeah, and bad. I was gonna say, and bad sound and a bad DJ, like like you're like nothing else lets you escape and sort of vacate and replenishes or whatever. I was like, let that person up there be doing the wrong shit.
100%.
And all that goes away. So simultaneously, nobody wants to be that dude, you know.
Yeah, true. We've all been there, right?
Yeah,
We've all been there.
yeah,
We've all been that dude that's ruined somebody's night.
yeah,
Oh, good
yeah,
times, man. Good times. I want to briefly talk about album. You
yeah.
mentioned album. This
Yeah.
excites me. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I had been stacking tracks in the first part of this year, kind of going through what I thought, auditioning tracks for what was going to be like the first only solo Kevin Knapp album, and then I think I changed management, and so with the new management, we sort of think that it's not the time for that yet, even though like my mom was tremendously disappointed. She was so excited to hear her son's like life work or whatever, and we'll get there. I think that we're in the process of like changing some of my label orientations, like who I'm working with. Not like I'll still be working with all the people I have in the past, provided they like what I'm doing. Crosstown Rebels,
Mm,
Creations, etc. But we got some new targets, and it was unlikely that they're going to be like, not only are we happy to have you, Kev, but we want to do the album. Like, you got to
yeah.
kind of introduce yourself. So that's album, but an album's worth of material exists in that capacity, and people will be hearing it. It will just probably not come out as an album. I have a second album, first time in my life, with, like I said, Jamie from Audio Jack, Jamie Rael, called KJ Cuts, and it's my vision for what it is sort of like, pour yourself a whiskey on ice or an NA beer, not on ice, and just kind of sit back, cross your legs and let us kick it for a minute. Let me talk to you.
Love that.
And it's I think the beats are absolutely fantastic, and it was written actually just at the outset of COVID, so we've been sitting on it for a minute. We haven't really shopped at that many places. Some bigger outfits have expressed some interest, and so we're just now sort of starting the shopping effort in earnest. But I'm very excited about it. It's down tempo, trip hop adjacent. It's as introspective, I would say, as a lot of the chat that we've had today is. This is probably as vulnerable as I've ever been on a podcast, but I'm consistent in character with who I am right now, and so I'm happy. If you got, if you want to hear about it, I'll tell you about it. And that the record kind of plays that way. So I'm
Sick.
super excited about that. I'll send it to you so you could hear it.
Please
I don't
do.
know if I'd mentioned it. And yeah, other than that, I'm working on a bunch of new stuff. I'm working on a record right now with Minx, DJ Minx, which I'm excited about. And like I said, I was with Luke Andy at Empire the other day. I've got a new thing with Audio Jack that's going to come. So we sort of reopened some of the collaborative space after this like Kev solo album
Yeah.
effort I have to manage the collab versus solo thing. So
It's
because
hard, right? It's a tough one, especially when you're so known for your vocals.
yeah, that's the whole thing. And
Yeah,
but but still, when they book Kev, they're not booking all those other people I'm on those records with. So it's you got to toe this line. But yeah, I'm excited. The studio's on fire. I also say that there's the next idea. You have to believe the next dope ideas around behind it is like
agreed.
not living in the now. There it's an inexhaustible well of sickness, and so like you just lean into the next thing. And so like I've tried to present as humbly as I can, but when it
It's
comes
so true,
up
man.
against the music, it's like,
Yeah.
but you have to do that to continue to create, right? Like to not think that the last thing you did was everything. You got to
Yeah,
believe
you
that
can't.
you're going to be sick again, So
Yeah, and you also have to accept in this day and age now of lifetime of music, of how long records last in the space that we release music is. You might have a hit, but it might only last a month.
yeah,
You might have what you think is a hit and it lasts a day. So
yeah,
it's like you never know, and I think just the constant writing helps. You never know what you're gonna make.
yeah.
Dude, we've literally just done about an hour very quickly, and I feel like we could carry on, but I'd love to do this again when the albums are there and people can hear.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on, man. I really, really do appreciate you taking the time out, and I know it's early in the morning, so really appreciate that.
Yeah, cool, man. I had a great time.
Thanks, man. Big love.
All right, cheers.
And that's a wrap. Big love to everybody for listening. Thank you for taking the time out. If you get to this point in the podcast, well, I really appreciate it. Till next time, keep safe.